With Pat Lopez, where we talk everything real estate. Today, my guest is Garrett Miller, managing partner and founder of Washington Square Realty
Capital.
Capital. There you go. Thank you. I want to start off the show, and I always start off the show with talking about your background, where you came from, how you get started in commercial lending, because
Sure.
the show's about commercial lending. Now, I did read in your bio that you went to Penn for rowing, right?
I did.
And you were in the Olympics, inducted to the U.S. Rowing Hall of Fame, right?
That's right.
So tell me your story. So you were recruited to go to Penn?
So I started rowing in high school,
Right.
LaSalle High School, and I was kind of like I had a great story, actually. I was the 32nd kid to make the team
Okay.
out of 32, and it was done by a flip of a coin. So it was a very, interesting start, and I just fell in love with the sport. And
Right.
it was one of those sports where if you worked hard enough, and you grew 10 inches when you between your sophomore and junior year, then
hurt,
you
right?
had you had a good shot at making it. So by my junior year, I made the U.S. junior national team and put myself on the fast track to the Olympics. So I just kind of progressed right through the development process very quickly.
Right.
So I won my first world championship right after turning 20 in Aiguebelay, France in 1997, and then won
great.
two more in 98, 99, and then went to the Olympics in Sydney and hung it up.
There you go.
Happily hung it up.
Okay, so how did you go from rowing to commercial lending? What did that look like? What's your background as far as that?
So like I said, I really have I had no connection, family, or anything like that to real estate. So for me, it was I had gone up to New York after taking some time off from rowing. Was going to plan on sort of doing the typical, if you went to Penn, you do the investment banking track.
Right.
I was getting myself teed up for that. And then 9/11 happened. And so that sort of fell apart. And I was up in New York. I was living in Hoboken at the time. And I met a guy who worked at a company called Insignia ESG, which was later became CB Richard Ellis.
Right.
And I started out in commercial office leasing in Midtown Manhattan, which is about as rough and tumble as it gets in the real estate world, and did that for 5 years. And like every Philly kid, had the itch to come back, and decided to come back in 2006.
Okay.
And so I loved it ever since. Started out on the development side, but always really enjoyed and really liked the transaction, the capital market side.
Okay.
And so I started out working with a couple different shops, hopping around, and then in 2012 realized I really want to be on my own.
Right.
And so I started my own shop, Washington Square Realty Capital, and it's been going great ever since.
Great. Now, when you made that decision, did you see a need or something that other companies were missing? Was there a hole in the market where you filled in, or you just thought you could do it better?
I sort of look at like the big, because I had spent some time at like CB Richard Ellis and other big shops, and I realized that it's the big shops advertise the quality of their platform, which they do have. That is the
Right.
distinguishing advantage that they have, is their platform and just the breadth of their sort of sales network. But in terms of like really working intimately with a client, because obviously we're a smaller shop, we're working with entrepreneurial type developers. We're not working with the institutional like REITs or things like that. It's the local entrepreneurial developer who's trying to build something to improve a neighborhood or community or city.
Right.
And so we felt that there was a sort of lack of a professionalism to serve those guys. And so, went on my own, and, we built a team, built up to almost 8 people at its peak.
Okay.
And have actually since brought it back down, and just realized that, after everything with the pandemic,
Right.
smaller, simpler is easier right now, and keep your overhead down. That's kind of the name of the game right now.
Okay. So let's jump right into commercial lending. What's going on?
Not much.
Not much, right? So I know a lot of banks, they're tightening up. They're hoarding cash. They don't want to be the next Republic or Silicon Valley Bank. Not having enough cash on hand. Those kind of things. So what are you seeing in the market? Do you see a tightening of lending? with some of your outlets?
So like we do a lot of with banks and credit unions, as well as we're accessing the more sort of non-traditional capital markets.
Okay.
Like we do a lot of CMBS, we do the agency financing, Fannie Freddie, and then we do probably the vast majority of the loans we get done these days is through the private, lending networks.
Okay.
Um,
Now,
you know,
would that be like hedge fund type things, or?
it can be a part of a hedge
could be,
fund,
right.
but it's a we'll call just a balance sheet lender, a private
Okay.
balance sheet lender. There's tons of these real estate funds, ranging in size from 10 million to 5 billion
Right.
in size, and they cover every aspect of the real estate markets. It's an interesting time right now because everybody sort of wants to say that there's like a one-stop answer to why are banks not lending? And what I found is that it's every bank, every credit union has a unique reason for not lending right now, or
Right.
for tightening up. Some of them are legitimately are having difficulty. They are having liquidity issues. Others are just making so much money because they had a bunch of floating rate loans that went up 500 basis points,
Right.
and they don't. It's why do anything?
Right.
We're sitting here doing nothing, and we're doing better than we've ever done. So the reasoning for why the markets have tightened up is vast, and but it's not just the banks. It's also the deals don't work right now.
Right.
I mean, just things don't pencil out. I mean, on the residential side, if you want to buy a house, you can make it work. You make it work. You get a loan. You scrape the money together. On the commercial side, it's just we've seen a 20, 30, 40, however you want to look at it, 50% plus increase in construction costs.
Right.
Pair that with this rapid increase in rates, and things just don't pencil.
Right.
And so we're finally seeing it trickle through on the commercial side. We're seeing it trickle through with valuations. So it took a while for things to catch up. The appraisers were there wasn't enough transaction volume
Right.
for them to really adjust yet. So they were sort of using, last year's cap rates, we'll call it. And now we're seeing definitively a rise of, probably at least 100 basis points increase on multifamily, 200 plus on office. So it's an interesting time.
Okay, so let's. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then I'm going to go into what's your sweet spot. What are you doing?
Sure.
What kind of business is coming to you, and you're closing. So as far as office space, you just mentioned that. I mean, that's all you read in the newspapers, here in the
Yep.
news. 70% or occupancy, 30% vacancy. What are you seeing there? It's just a tough time. There's no money in that market.
Office, I don't even know honestly where to start. I don't think I even want to take it on right now.
Right.
So we're focused on obviously the bread and butter for everybody in the commercial side is multifamily. So we're doing quite a bit of multifamily. A lot of what we're doing is sort of kicking the can down the road. So right now you have a developer who built a project. They underwrote, let's say, a 4.5% takeout. The takeouts now are 7.5% plus. You're just kicking on the can down the road for 2 to 3 years and hoping the rates come back in and you make the deal work.
Right.
So we're putting sort of like bridge loans in place for those types of situations. We're doing a little bit of what I'll call the good news lending, which is trying to build something.
Right.
So we're working on some multifamily deals down in Florida. There's a lot going on. There's some stuff going on still in Philadelphia. We're actually seeing a lot on the hotel side, which is interesting. Both development as well as refis. And what we're seeing is the typical outlet for hotels, say greater than $10 million, is CMBS. So the CMBS market right now is broken, and who wants to lock in like a 7.5, 8% plus rate,
Right.
for 5 or 10 years with defeasance? You're not getting out of it. So we're trying to find solutions for real estate owners and developers that have some flexibility in it. And if it probably right now we're finding it makes sense to pay, even if to pay a little more, to lock in the flexibility.
Right.
That's more important than trying to lock in, whereas 2-3 years ago, we were just chasing down rates. Now it's all about certainty of execution and just, how do I get out of this if I have to?
Okay.
Or,
So let me ask this question, because we mentioned about multifamily and rentals in Philadelphia. And there was an article talking about there's 9,400 units coming on board.
Mhm.
If you just look in the Northern Liberties area, I think there's like 7,000 plus. I was driving down Columbus Boulevard. There's a hole in the ground. They started working and they stopped. So, but you talked about like the smaller stuff where somebody's, building or trying to buy a 9 unit or a 5 unit. So some of that you're seeing, some people coming to you and being able to execute on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on projects ranging from as small as 15, 20 units is kind of the lower echelon of what we want to be on, up to 300 plus. So, bigger is always better in our business, no matter what it is. If you're, it's the same amount of work, just add a zero, it makes things better all across the board. But, everybody talks about this thing as there's 9,400 units coming online in Philadelphia, and that doesn't scare me. And I don't think it scares a lot of the lenders either, or the investors if we're working on like equity side. It's getting your head around it. You're building apartments. Most of them are one bedroom, some are twos.
Right.
What's the average? 1.5, people living in them. So you're talking about 15,000 people have to move to Philadelphia or relocate in Philadelphia. If we're a city of 1.5 million, so it's like we can't add 1%. I mean, a year. I mean, that should be the baseline that we're looking to add. So, I just look at that as that's just a healthy city.
Okay. So you're good there. Okay. So let me ask you another question, and I really want to get into, some examples, some of the things that you're doing, right now. We'll elaborate a little bit on that. People who on the commercial side, you'll have where people have like a 5-year adjustable or a 5-year balloon. Are you seeing people coming to you and just with you mentioned the interest rates that, hey, my 5-year balloon came up, the lender may not be interested in keeping this type of loan. They're coming to you saying, hey, can you help me out? And oh my God, it's, I was at 3 or 4%. Now it's 8%.
We're seeing
what's that looking like?
So we're seeing where we've had loans that are maturing. We're doing one right now where it's a multifamily deal. They had a loan locked in at 5% and now it's rolling.
Right.
And it's, the project is, the income doesn't justify the refi. So you're looking at bridge. And so we're sort of, again, that's the kick the can down the road scenario. We're also seeing a lot of, like I said, it's just I don't want to say the term workout, but we're definitely doing a lot of situations where we're kind of working to bail people out and buy them time.
Right.
There's not a lot of good news right now. There's not a lot of you're locking in. The traditional, real estate has a rhythm to it. It's formulaic. If you're a real estate developer, you come in, you buy the land, you get entitled, you build it for a certain price, you lease it for a certain rent, and then you have have an acquisition loan, then you have a construction loan, then maybe you have a bridge to your perm, and then you perm it out. That whole perm side is just doesn't exist right now, or it doesn't exist in any way that makes sense for most developers and most deals. So everything right now is about just biding our time.
Right. And the banks, they don't want to take the property, so they may give them another year or so, basically kicking the can down the road.
I hate to say that everybody uses the term lend and pretend and lend, but I mean, we're kind of in a little bit of that mode.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now you mentioned Florida. What is your footprint? Where can you lend? And then what are some of the deals where if somebody calls you up, you say, "Oh, great, I can get this thing closed." So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so we're based in Center City, Philadelphia. So it's sort of like you're going to concentrate there, but we actually cover the entire country, anywhere that's sort of in the continental U.S. We've even done stuff in the Caribbean. So we're all over the place. We're sort of geographically agnostic. That being said, my business philosophy has always been to, as opposed to going out and chasing deals, I want to secure a client and work with that client and really get to know them intimately and they get to know us. We sort of become an extension of their firm. Okay. And it's almost like the outsourced CFO role. So it's like, instead of chasing 20 deals, I just want to work 3, 4, 5 clients and just basically hope you get 3, 4, 5 deals a year from each of them, and then you have a great year.
Right.
And that way we're not spending our time, cold calling and chasing.
So it's a lot of relationship building.
It's all relationship building.
And with somebody
on every side of it, by the way, the capital side as well. Everything. I mean, we have a database of 3,000 capital sources I mean, typically we approach 100 and probably work with 24 of them.
Right.
I mean, it's just you work with who you know
Exactly.
and who you're comfortable with and who you trust. I mean, that's the most important thing, especially when we're doing in this environment where you're going into it knowing that every deal is going to be a challenge. And when you're getting towards that finish line, the entire team that's working on it, everyone from the brokers to the developer, the lender to the attorneys, everybody has to be focused because you have to drag every one of these deals across the finish line right now. There's nothing that's easy right now.
Okay, perfect. Now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, they have some, project that they want to talk to you about, how would they do that? How would they get a hold of you?
Two best ways. Our website is www.wsqcap.com, and feel free to call me direct at the office, 267-546-9024. I'll pick up myself.
There you go. And we're going to, post those numbers up and everything for them. Well, very interesting. I'm glad you came on the show. It was a topic that I've been wanting to talk about. Okay. So, when I came across your name, haven't spoken to you in a while, and I was like, oh, let me call Garrett up. So thanks for being on the show.
I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Great. So that's the Real Estate Show with Pat Lopez. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. And also be sure to subscribe. I have some great guests, some really great content you don't want to miss. Also, leave a comment. Tell me some things that you like, you don't like, or some future topics you would like me to cover in the future. Remember, this show is everything real estate. No limits. Hope you enjoyed the show and have